Good afternoon and welcome to the Participate Pennsylvania Voter Participation Training. I'm Hannah Lokop of the Forbes Funds and the Greater Pittsburgh Nonprofit Partnership, or GPMP for short. This is the fourth of 4 online trainings that have taken place each Wednesday in September. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of our project's presenting partners, Keystone Progress Education Fund, PCRG, GPNP, the Forbes Funds, PANO, Pennsylvania's Association of Nonprofit Organizations, Erie's Nonprofit Partnership, the National Urban League, Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition, Pittsburgh City Paper, Pennsylvania Capital Star, and Public News Service. We're joined by our co-host, Allegheny County Councilwoman, District 13, Representative Olivia Bennett.
Thanks so much, Hannah. And I got a reminder that I did not put everything on silent, so now I did. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilwoman Olivia Bennett. I live for short from the Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition. Today's training focuses on mobilizing seniors and young people, plus safe get out the vote tactics for the general election. We'll feature guest trainers from Hunger Free Pennsylvania, New Voters, PA Votes, and Nonprofit Vote. If anyone has questions for our guests, please use the chat tool in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. We'll make sure to at least have 30 minutes at the end of today's event to answer any questions. This session is being recorded and will be available at the Pittsburgh City Paper website at pghcitypaper.com and on many of our partner organization websites. We're pleased to welcome our first speaker, Sheila Christopher, who is Executive Director of Hunger Free Pennsylvania, who will provide an overview of her organization's efforts reaching senior citizens with basic information on how to register and vote safely in 2020. Welcome, Sheila, and take it away.
Hi, thank you all for having me. To start off, Hunger Free Pennsylvania administers a federal food program for senior citizens. We distribute over 36,000 food boxes every month. We thought in our partnership with PA Votes, we wanted to, especially in these times of COVID, ensure that our participants in that program were aware of ways that they could vote safely in Pennsylvania. So the first thing we did was to not duplicate anyone's effort. PA Votes provided us with a list of organizations that they were working with and addresses for to get out the vote. Our first step was to identify those organizations we're in. Our next step was to identify counties potentially no outreach would be conducted in, and look at least one of our distribution agencies in each of those counties. We compiled a chart that listed that county name. We identified a senior agency, distribution agency in that county, and the total amount of boxes that they give out each month. And we distributed at the sub-agency. We then identified the number of packets per sub-agency, and we made a commitment of 300 to PA Votes. We're falling well behind that. It's really hard for us to track if the packets that we gave out were actually taken action on. In the end, we distributed over 900 packets with the food boxes in September. And we are looking at contacting those agencies to see if they had any kind of feedback. The majority of these were put in, requested in the September food packages. So this was kind of our how-to list on what we did to identify those over 900. These were the counties that we identified, and the agencies we identified, the senior boxes that we gave. give out in those areas, in the counties themselves, and kind of came up with some numbers to not financially burden each of our food banks that actually administer the program, and to stay within the guidelines of the funds that we did receive to do the program. So this is what the packet looked like. PA Votes helped us put this together. You know, this is the cover page. The inside, it's the question: do you want to register to vote and apply for a mail-in ballot online? Then the next part of that, you can do this on your phone, computer, open your internet browser and type in this information. If they receive this packet, which we did send some of them out online, if you clicked on these links, it would take you directly to that. So this area right here, register to vote. The next was important dates for them to remember, mail your ballot early, reminding that this is a nonpartisan activity. So that was the second page of our registration packet or information packet. Next was step 1, update your voter registration, and how to do that. And if they did not want to do this online and they wanted to do it by paper, that was part of, we talked about apply for a mail-in ballot, and then remember to mail your completed ballot. The next page was the actual voter registration application. Then there was the application for mail-in vote and ballot. And what I did was included all of the, in those counties that we were targeting, where they would send either their application or registration to vote, or their application for a mail-in ballot. That is pretty much what we did in a nutshell. That packet is available for use. Obviously, we would need to, you would need to adapt, especially the last page, that to include voter registration information for the, and where they should mail ballots, etc. That is my down and dirty presentation in I guess 10 minutes or less. And I guess I'll take questions later on in that time frame. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for that down and dirty presentation. I think you got it all in there. So, word count is not important. Just getting the information out there is. So we appreciate you. So now we're joined by our next guest, Genevieve Rowe and Cameron Dill of New Voters, who will let us know how their organization is helping mobilize young voters in Pennsylvania. Welcome, Genevieve and Cameron. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Genevieve. I'm a rising junior at Harvard and currently the president and founder of New Voters, which is a 501c3 dedicated to registering high school students to vote and amplifying their voice. I'm currently based back home in Berwyn, Pennsylvania. Went to Conestoga High School and happy to be here. So thank you so much for having us and for putting together this incredible webinar series, and also really, really impressed and in awe as always of the incredible work done by everyone on this call, especially just hearing from Hunger Free PA. So did you know that 40% of eligible voters are considered young as Gen Z or millennials? In fact, 3 million high school students graduate every single year and help make up this largest and fastest growing demographic. However, these many potential voters are not showing up to vote, voting at about half the rate of their older counterparts. Additionally, there are a lot of economic barriers in place that result in low-income communities voting at about half the rate of high-income citizens. As a result, youth issues such as school safety and climate change are deprioritized by legislators. However, there's a lot of potential power with this demographic only growing in size. Our goal is to amplify the youth voice through high school civic engagement and empower high school leaders so that youth issues are top of mind for lawmakers. We do this in 3 ways. Primarily is our nonpartisan voter registration drives, which we support through our unique high-touch near-peer mentorship model, where we match a trained college mentor with a high school student leader. Additionally, we want to ensure all voters are informed voters and are educated about the issues and candidates that they care about. Each and every one of your organizations could have a role to play in this, and we'll be getting into that later on in this and how this can be amplified, the youth voice, through your own work. I wanted to talk a little bit about how this started and like how this really has strong roots in Pennsylvania and why it is our primary focus state. My junior year at Conestoga High School in Chester County, I formed the nonpartisan high school run club called New Voters, and our goal was to educate and empower young voters to get involved in the political process. If you're familiar with Chester County as an area, it's a very purple place, and that's reflected in my high school as well. Opposing interests on both sides of the aisle, but throughout the election year, I could hear, my generation, just so engaged and desperate to have a say in our future on both sides of the aisle. And some say, our generation is apathetic and unengaged, but in a quick Google search, we'll find countless articles saying that. But I'm here to tell you, as a 20-year-old, my generation is not only engaged, but desperate to build a better future ourselves, especially here in Pennsylvania, where our vote matters so much. So in October of 2017, New Voters hosted a registration drive at Conestoga High School with the goal of registering 85% of our senior class to vote. And with 4 days, we went from 30% to 85%. And that's the New Voters method that we follow now, born right here in Pennsylvania and really grown exactly from the methods that were found most successful here. So how does this look like when executed? New Voters benefit students in many different ways, but let me give you 2 examples. Jess was an uninformed high school student who never thought twice about politics, but when New Voters ran a registration drive at her school, Episcopal High School, and educated her on topics relevant to her interests, New Voters, it made a huge difference. And when we reminded with her with a text on election day, the deal was sealed. Jess has since become a politically engaged member of society who has been informed in every election since. On the other hand, the impact is even greater for politically inclined students. Take Akila, for example, from Avongrove High School, also in Pennsylvania. After the 2016 election, she was emblazoned and wanted to get involved, but didn't know how. She heard about New Voters and reached out, and New Voters gave her the resources, including a one-on-one college mentor that she was matched with to help her have the impact desired. After putting together a successful high school drive registering 85% of her class to vote, Akila is now a lifelong civically engaged member of society, a leader at her college's biggest political organization, and is right now a director at New Voters as well. To date, we've had success with 20,000 students registered, 259 high school chapters, and 115 college mentors across the country. I want to highlight our partnerships with high school Democrats and high school Republicans. I also wanted to zoom in a little bit onto our impact within Pennsylvania. We have 56 and growing everyday high school chapters in Pennsylvania, and we'll be getting into this in a little bit when we talk about our partnership opportunities, but we will be hosting a summit specifically targeting Pennsylvania students with the goal of registering 6,000 students this weekend, October 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you visit either the QR code or that link, more information can be found about that, but it's a really valuable resource for students in high school and college in Pennsylvania. So how do we actually register these students to vote? We have the simple process of matching a high school leader with a college mentor and take them all the way to running a successful voting drive. And we provide them with a variety of resources, from communication plans to generate administrative buy-in to group and one-on-one trainings to create individualized plans for each school. And to date, most every registration drive has registered 85% of their class to vote. And now is the perfect time to be doing this because students care. The 2020 election has garnered more interest than any election previously in the youth. And the recent national outcry for Black Lives Matter has young people yearning to make a legislative difference. And students at home, due to coronavirus, have gone to online school and clubs have been canceled, and they want to spend their time productively. So I will pass it over to Cameron Deal, our Director of Partnerships, to talk briefly about how we can work together on this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Genevieve. And first, I want to thank everyone who's attending today. your enthusiasm for this is so key to achieving our goals and our broader goals of democratic engagement for young people. So I want to thank you for being here today. So I'm Cameron, I'm the Director of Partnerships at New Voters, and I'd love to talk about a couple ways that we have for your organization to help us with our work and get involved with civic engagement, specifically towards youth. So one of the biggest ways that we have partnered with other organizations to basically collaborate and build our shared goals is through outreach. Your organization, whether it's faith-based or a homeless shelter or anything that's even totally unrelated to civic engagement, probably has links with young people, whether they volunteer at your or they're served by your nonprofit. We would really appreciate if you could reach into your networks of young people. And we're always looking to expand our high school mentor program or our high school program, and then also our college mentor program. And some examples of this, we've had a high school partner here in Pennsylvania, March for Our Lives, which we've been able to run group trainings with them and recruit all of their mentors, even though their mission isn't directly related to civic engagement. And then an example of a college organization that we've partnered with here in Pennsylvania is Penn Leads the Vote. They've been able to push out our mentor recruitment efforts to their members and help us basically recruit some of these amazing college students who guide our students through the process of running their voter registration drives. Additionally, I think there's going to be another organization that touches on this a little bit later in the presentation, but we can also support Get Out the Vote efforts. So if you have any questions about that, we would be happy to build out that. And something we're looking into right now is a kind of a social media challenge that is going to channel some of the best aspects of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, if you remember that from a couple years back. So outreach is a really key component of our partnership opportunities, but we also have some other ones. Genevieve, could you do next slide? Awesome. So some of the other opportunities that we have include content. So we have worked together with a variety of organizations to create civic education materials or connect other issues that is important to youth or general voters to our democratic engagement goals. And so one example of this is our upcoming Pennsylvania Summit partners. We've partnered with Committee of 70, the League of Women Voters, JSA, and the Philadelphia City Commission. And we basically worked with them to create civic education materials. But an example of an organization that isn't as directly related to government would be, we've worked with some of our organizations down in Florida to create collaborative material around climate change and programming around that to kind of connect that key issue for many youth voters to democratic engagement. So there is an opportunity there, and you can contact our email right there, partnerships@newvoters.org, and I would be happy to set up a meeting to discuss any ideas you have for content creation where we can work together to create civic education materials. And then the final one would be promotion. We've worked with quite a few different organizations to promote our efforts. And so one of these is Feeding America, not very related to civic engagement in the broadest sense, but we've worked with them to create a social media partnership so that we can amplify each other's work. And more directly related to Pennsylvania example would be Philly Youth Vote, where they have a large network of Pennsylvania high schoolers that they are plugged into and a lot of education connections. And we can basically work together to promote each other's work and leverage our platforms for good. So again, this is an area where I would urge you to reach out to our email, and we would be happy to start that conversation with you. And one thing I would add is many of our partners cross these boundaries. It doesn't have to be you're only a content partner, or only a promotion partner, or only an outreach partner. We work with many organizations that intersect all of those areas, and we would be happy to come up with an individualized partnership plan with your organization. So I think that's it from my section. Genevieve, did you want to add anything else?
That's basically everything. I do want to say that I believe that, any way that you can help with amplifying youth voices is just really huge, because young people, yes, aren't voting at as much rate as older populations, but from conversations with young people, it's not that we don't want to have a say in our future, and it's not that we don't want to make a difference, but rather that due to a lack of civic education or due to specific legislation, it is really hard for young people to find a way to vote. And what we want to do is provide as many ways to break down those barriers and provide access to students who historically have not been able to, get these resources. So if you know someone who, falls into this age demographic, or you're serving students in this age demographic, we would really love to work with you and create these personalized plans with them through this college mentorship program. So thank you guys so much for your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me on this, or obviously partnerships at New Voters as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johnavie, and I'm sorry for butchering your name. I always like to hear you say it. So after I heard you, I was like, that makes sense. So I apologize, but thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much for your presentation. You're amazing. Every time I hear from youth, I think you guys give me new hope, because you are the future. And I'm so excited to hear the future is going to be bright doing the work that you're doing. I love your recruitment efforts with the senior citizen population and their grandkids. Like, that is super creative, and we might have to steal that. So thank you for your awesome work and your innovation and your energy. So we're joined now by our next guest, Kate Kelly, Associate Director at the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania, and Caitlin Donnelly, Program Director at Nonprofit Vote, who will update us on the PA Votes Initiative and resources for safe Get Out the Vote efforts. Welcome, and take it away.
Thank you. I'm just going to start my slides. Hold on a minute. Share my screen. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting us to join you today. This is a great group, and it's so great to hear about, that all that everybody is doing around voter registration. It's really inspiring. The Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania is thrilled this year for the first time to be a state anchor, partnering with Nonprofit Votes. And as state anchor, we are working through PA Votes with 23 nonprofits around the state of Pennsylvania that have a variety of constituencies of individuals who perhaps were not previously connected to voting, may have faced barriers to voting, maybe low income, have disabilities. So we're really working with this diverse group of 23 partners to work to engage individuals around voter contacts. So we're working to encourage people to register to vote, encourage people to apply for a mail-in ballot if that's how they're choosing to vote safely, and to sign up for a reminder to vote. I have down here at the bottom, and I'll share this when I'm done presenting in the chat. This is a link to a digital tool that individuals can use to do the following: register to vote, apply for a mail-in ballot, and sign up for a reminder. And this is something that you all can share through your networks and your social media. This link, you can share it in your social media through newsletters. You can email it to your distributions list, share it however you would like. It's kind of one-stop shopping for voter engagement in Pennsylvania. And as I said, we're thrilled to have our 23 partners, and the next two slides just highlight who some of our many partners are. The slides that have asterisks next to them are organizations who last week participated in National Voter Registration Day. And you'll see on the second slide, we're highlighting Hunger Free Pennsylvania. We're thrilled that they are one of our 23 partners that we are working with. And this is just our last slide of partners. As I said on a call that we had earlier internally with some of the partners, we would not be able to do the work that we're doing without them. We've set a statewide goal of 4,000 new voter contacts by the election, and our partners are steadily working towards that goal and really doing a great job. And so information that we're sharing with our partners to share with their constituents are I'm sure this isn't news to you, but the voter registration deadline of October 19th, the deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot of October 27th, and election day on November 3rd. And, once we get folks registered to vote by the 19th and applying for the mail-in ballot, then we're going to really pivot to the get out the vote efforts that we're already planning to make sure that everyone understands not only do we want them to vote or, make a plan to vote with a mail-in ballot, but that their vote is important. And I'll just close with some contact information for PA votes at the Housing Alliance. My contact information is at the top. I can put that in the chat as well. And then two of my colleagues, Keena Minifield and Gail Schwartz, who are working with us on this initiative. So thanks again to all our partners. Thank you for including us. And I'll throw the link in the chat that people can use to share this digital voter engagement tool with your constituencies. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Donnelly, and I am the Program Director for Nonprofit Vote. I've been working with Kate and the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania on their voter engagement program this year, and it's been a really great partnership. And we've really enjoyed getting connected to all these new organizations and sites and really supporting the work across Pennsylvania as a, diverse state that's not, trying to get beyond just like the, city centers and really have a statewide sort of response and effort around voter engagement. So as Kate mentioned, we're about to go into our sort of GOTV season. Of course, this year things look a little different than they have in the past, thanks to COVID-19, but I think, are needed more than ever to provide voters with accurate, timely information about how they can participate, because there's so much noise going on right now around the election, but we can provide that clear call to action, and a nonpartisan one at that, of course. So I want to share with you all some GOTV tactics and just sort of dive into this topic more generally. So GOTV, what is it? When we say GOTV, we mean get out the vote. So that's any effort that's really trying to get people to turn out to vote. Campaigns typically use a lot of GOTV in the weeks leading up to elections. That looks like door knocking or phone banking, mailers. I'm sure we're seeing less of that most places this year, but I remember 2018 and 2016 and just constant mail coming to my door from campaigns. And when we do GOTV, a lot of times our focus is on the voters that we've already been in contact with, such as the voters through the PA Votes program. So the people that nonprofits serve and engage. We know that this multi-touch tactic is really effective, and that once you see a big increase in terms of turnout if you've done more than one what's known as a touch. So that's why we like to start early, and we got the program off the ground in July, so that now it's October and we're really contacting people again for the most part. But we can always we're always adding, engaging more people and adding more people to our lists. So there are many different methods for GOTV. For ones that are being used this year are, we're seeing still a lot of live communication. So people calling and texting people and having that dialogue in real time. Some groups are using automated communication. That might be a recorded voicemail or a standardized text that's sent to a large group of people all at once, rather than like a back and forth text conversation. Mailers, as I mentioned, and voter education. So this is making sure voters know how to apply for a mail-in ballot if they would like one, how they can vote, where they can vote in person early, their polling place, making sure that they really understand the process, because someone could be registered and they could say, yes, I'm definitely going to vote. But if they don't know all the little steps that they need to take to actually get to that ballot box, it's pretty likely that things will go wrong and they won't actually be able to cast their ballot and participate. Community events used to be held, in person. Now they're happening digitally, virtually, primarily, unless we're talking about like a good drive-through voter registration, vote by mail event with lots of masks and social distancing. But a virtual event is another great way to reach people, and it's a really good venue for voter education. So of these tactics, we do a lot of them. So this year we are doing live calls, peer-to-peer texts. Again, so this is a way that it can be a conversation. So it's not just a link or a reminder. I get those from TurboVote and they are nice, but actually having someone from your community reaching out is proven to be more effective with that personalized touch. We are doing some mailings of plan to vote cards and pledge to vote cards, and supporting our partners to do these community GOTV events. So what does this actually look like? So here's a copy. This is actually from our 2019 program, but the slide was already created, so I used it. So there has been some field work happening in Pennsylvania and in other states, and so we've given our partners these pledge cards so that voters can fill these out, and we can collect their contact information so that we can actually do that GOTV later, that second touch. These cards also provide some information. So you'll see that this is a North Carolina example. So there's a website that they use for voters to get information. And of course, the election protection hotline is always a good bit of information to be spreading, especially this year, where voters may face even more problems at the polls. Maybe they requested a mail ballot and it didn't come, and so they had to vote in person. These things happen. A last minute change of address. Election protection hotline is your best friend in these instances. So this year we also did a lot of digital, and so the digital pledging can really continue throughout GOTV season and act as its own form of GOTV. So this is actually a screenshot from the pa-votes.org site that Kate referenced and that the PA Votes partners are using. So you can see here that folks can opt in to mail a mail reminder, or if they just want to be reminded digitally so that they're getting that text. For voter education, we really promote some great nonpartisan resources. Vote411.org is a fantastic resource for people to find the information they need about their polling place and what will appear on their ballot, as is Ballot Ready. I like both of these platforms. If you have a more tech savvy audience you're speaking to, Ballot Ready is really cool because it's a site, not an app, but it does help you fill out a sort of sample ballot that you can take to the polls for anyone who does want to vote in person, or if they're just excited and can't wait for that mail ballot to actually show up, they can start to do their research now and figure out how they're going to vote their ballot so that it's a really easy process when they sit down to complete that. So we want to invite anyone who wants to really join this PA Votes initiative. We love community partners, especially nonprofits serving their communities. So if you want to get in on this, we are happy to help provide those things, particularly phone calls and texts. You'll need to email Kate and get those lists. We will need phone numbers in order to do this. Ideally, those phone numbers will have names because that will make a more effective call. We'd love to know if those phone numbers are cell phones or landlines so that we don't text landlines. And we'd love those by October 7th if you want to have a push around voter registration. Things that come to us after that will just get the more typical GOTV push that's focused on, assuming that this person must already be registered because the registration deadline is, coming up on us closely. And by the time we do that second round calls, it'll mostly be stuff like, have you gotten your mail-in ballot? If you applied for one, do you know where your polling place is? How likely are you to vote, etc. So we're happy to do this heavy lifting for us if you just provide us the information for these voters that you serve, that you want us to reach. But we know a lot of people prefer to DIY, do it yourself, DIY GOTV. So what can that look like if you want to do this on your own? So direct communications, calls or texts, you can use a vendor. It's about 50 cents about approximately per call. If you're using a vendor, you want to make sure you have a really good script developed. It's hard to read here probably. We do have, this is like a sample script. Again, it's from last year, so there's some definite edits that we'd include for this year in light of COVID. But it is asking them, do you have or need a mail ballot? How likely are you to vote? And using those persuasion and plan making techniques to be more compelling and convincing for voters. But actually a volunteer phone bank is the most effective. So if you have volunteer capacity, that enthusiastic and personally connected outreach is best. So this can, be done using your own volunteers. It can also be done just with the people you serve. If you want to have, for any of you who do not have phone lists, take a more relational approach to this, where you are asking people to reach out to 3 people they know and having those 3 people reach out to 3 more and have that ripple effect. So I think this is a really good technique for both seniors and young people, young people texting their friends. It doesn't have to be over text. Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat all have really good infrastructure around voting as well. So it really fits into the civic culture those platforms are trying to evoke. So using those platforms, also our seniors, they can, call other people that they know, have that nice conversation. This is another case where ideally you would either provide a script or some sort of resource like our state fact sheet on voting in Pennsylvania that we have on the Nonprofit Vote site, just so you can answer people's questions when they come up. So in short, what is GOTV? It's anything that works for your community and that helps people get voting and participating in our democracy. So be creative and have fun with it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Kate and Caitlin, for your presentations today. We really appreciate all this information, especially only 30-something days out from the election. So all of this is really crucial information in a really crucial time. So now I'm joined again by Hannah Lokop, as we begin answering your submitted questions. If you like a question answered, please submit via the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. You can also use the chat at the bottom of your screen to share any additional resources or connections or links you'd like everyone to know about, and we'll share those out to all participants. So while you share things and ask and submit more questions, Hannah and I are going to jump in and start asking questions. So Hannah, would you like to start us in questions?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much, Councilwoman Bennett. And thank you to folks who have popped in their questions as well as their resources in the chat already. I want to go back to the beginning to talk to our friends at Hunger Free Pennsylvania. There was a question around how folks can access the voter packet that you all used so they can also plug it into their own food distribution.
And I am going to try to figure out how to put that in the chat because I am very technologically challenged.
Don't you worry, Sheila. I think you can also forward it to Pat perhaps via email, and Pat can make sure that everyone gets it.
Like you're a mind reader. It's fantastic. Thank you.
I try. And thank you, Sheila, for making this an open resource for people, the way in which, the same way that new voters are doing so with their partners. And so I wanted to ask too, Sheila, I think you gave great strategy for how you all incorporated that into our regular food distribution. What kind of follow-up is being done with seniors to answer their questions or to track how many registrations have been done?
Well, actually, the Housing Alliance is helping with that. I provided them with a list of names and phone numbers, and so they're going to be making the phone calls, and I adapted their script for that. So that's the current plan as follow-up.
Very cool. So relying on partners in Housing Alliance is there for you all. That's awesome. Liv, would you like to go ahead with some more questions?
Sure. So we're going to go to new voters, Genevieve and Cameron. So either one of you who would like to answer these. What are the most salient messages and communication channels for engaging youth voters?
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize to disappoint. Unfortunately, Genevieve had to hop off this call, but
No worries.
I will try to take her place. But one of the things that we've found has been really helpful is social media, which is kind of the buzzword nowadays with youth engagement. But we found, especially the platform Instagram, we've had some wonderful graphic designers on our team that are able to take these complex voting and civic engagement concepts and boil it down to their essence, and then post about it. And we're able to reach a large audience through that. I think we've had a couple posts go viral on Instagram and reach like hundreds of thousands of people. And so I think that process of taking these complex pieces of information and boiling them down to more visually accessible forms has been really effective. And then one other method that we've kind of been using for our recruitment is relational organizing. So saying, do you have any friends who might be interested in civic engagement? Because almost everyone who's being a student leader for new voters has some other thing, like they play soccer or they're in an orchestra or they know other motivated young people who want to get involved. And so we found that process of reaching out through personal contacts has also been super helpful with engaging young people.
I would agree with that. I was at a voter engagement thing yesterday in East Pittsburgh, which is here in Allegheny County, and one of our youth was there, and she said that she's not old enough to vote. She's infuriated because she's not old enough to vote. She's only 17, but she has many folks that she knows that are old enough to vote. So she's using her energy to engage those folks through her relationships. So I was just sharing that as testimony to what you're saying, that does actually work. So going on, what opportunities are there for intergenerational voter education and engagement?
I wanted to add one point on what you just said about the youth that you know. We actually we have a wonderful team of around 40 high school interns, and most of them cannot vote yet. And they are already doing so much to register their peers and people who are older than them. And we just think it's so wonderful that they're so engaged, and even though they're not able to vote yet, that they're taking that energy and using it constructively. And then what I would add about the intergenerational aspect, we've had a lot of, we've worked with a lot of partners to create programming around having those intergenerational civic conversations. Actually, one of the features of our Pennsylvania Summit is going to be a conversation between the League of Women Voters and Committee of 70, and then also JSA, which is a youth organization. And we're hoping to kind of talk about some of the barriers that exist, where some of the youth who might feel that they're not being taken seriously when they talk to adults about political issues or that kind of thing. So we're looking at different strategies that exist for having those healthy, respectful political conversations across generational divides.
I just love your work. It's just so motivating. So lastly, what are some strategies for cultivating a culture of civic engagement with and alongside young people?
I think the biggest thing is really making it a social thing, where we're doing it like you're challenging your friends to vote, or you're reaching out to all the people in your contact roll and asking them if they're registered to vote. And I think it's that kind of using our networks and like our social power as humans and leveraging that to create a culture of civic engagement where it's assumed that you're voting, it's assumed that you're registering. And if you don't, then here are the resources to do that. And I think that's kind of how you create that culture of lifelong, robust civic engagement, which is really the goal of New Voters.
Yes, I love that. I love you guys. So I'll make sure to stay in contact with you all because I'm really excited about your work. So I'm tossing it back over to Hannah to finish our questions.
Thanks so much, Liv and Cameron. I want to add too, when getting folks who aren't old enough to vote, I experienced through the Asian American community, folks who may not have status to vote, them talking to their family members and friends who are able to register and vote to make sure that the election isn't just about them and their choice. It involves other people who don't have that liberty. But I do want to direct some attention to the conversation going on in the chat as well. Paul has graciously offered some resources and articles around some barriers that folks in long-term care facilities may face regarding accessing their right to vote. So when going off of that intergenerational partnership, perhaps there's a place for, say Paul and New Voters to work together to help overcome those barriers. So back to questions. I want to direct these to Kate and Caitlin. I want to ask about what specific tactics are being employed in Pennsylvania through your partnership to reach historically underrepresented populations, for example, Black and Brown voters, low-income voters, and renters.
Looks like Kate might be having a little technical difficulty. So our whole model really relies on the idea that nonprofits are exceptionally well positioned to reach the people that they serve as trusted messengers. So our research from running similar programs in the past is that the nonprofits are twice as likely to reach lower income people, communities of color, younger voters, voters with lower education attainment, et cetera, and to have a disproportionate impact on their turnout. So when we look at all the voters that the program reaches, not only are they more likely to be these underserved voters, but those voters have the highest turnout advantage compared to others in their community that share their demographic background. So over time, so that's how we know we're reaching those communities you spoke about, particularly communities of color. And by reaching out again through phone calls and text messages, especially when they can be done within the community, is a really effective method. And we are always staying nonpartisan. So our message doesn't get conflated so much with campaigns who sometimes will come into a community, extract the vote, and then leave. Nonprofits are there, all year, regardless of what's happening with an election. And we just want people to vote. So we know that messaging also can be important and effective, making sure people understand their votes matter. So I'd say it's a combination of, we know our lists are reaching the right people, and we do our best so that our messages and our messengers are the most compelling and effective for the people that nonprofits serve.
Thanks, Caitlin. And I would just add, specifically some of the, there's so many great voter tactics being employed by our nonprofits across the state, but nonprofits where they can safely are doing door-to-door canvassing. They are reaching out to clients and former clients by phone to check in with them, see if they have any questions about voter registration. A lot of the organizations we work with do work related to housing. So when individuals who may have been formerly homeless or living in a nursing home get settled in their new places, they're reaching out to remind them that if you've had a change of address, you should be registering to vote. I think that, outreach that Sheila's doing through the food boxes is another great example. We have organizations that are working with younger demographics that are using text and Facebook Live, and there's just been a really great variety. We've been blown away by, given these uncertain times where, how traditional voter registration would have happened can't be happening. They're being very creative. So it's been really wonderful to see. We feel like kind of the sky's the limit on what they can do as long as they stay nonpartisan around voter registration.
That's amazing to hear. So thanks, Kate and Caitlin. I'm glad to hear that people are getting the message from all angles and getting assistance in multiple ways. A question popped up in the chat about how is privacy of clients protected if organizations share their lists with Housing Alliance or Nonprofit Vote?
And I would just say we're not, the list that we're using to do calling, our partners are sharing with us, and some nonprofit partners for a variety of reasons can't. So we're not actually asking groups to share lists with us. We'd actually rather, for your initial voter outreach, that you share our digital tool with your organizations, because as Caitlin said, nonprofits are such trusted information being collected through voter contacts is being shared.
I'll also say that all the contact information shared with Nonprofit Vote is only used for nonpartisan purposes. So for get out the vote calls, for anonymized reporting, so that we do know who we reached and that we're doing a good job or that we need to do better in the future. It's never sold, it's never shared, and it is, kept secure. And typically once after a program cycle, and it goes into like the spring, because that's when voter rolls are updated by states. After that point, we typically destroy any data that we still have held on to, because we do take voters' privacy very seriously.
That's great to know. And I want to highlight in the chat as well Pat's question before I toss it back to Liv. So Pat had a great question about how data that is housed either in VAN or other voter file tools are rarely accessible to community-based nonprofits. So have either Kate or Caitlin, you've seen communities and nonprofits starting to share these resources and community-owned data to better reach potential voters over time?
Yeah, it's tough. Even we have many partners in different states that work with their state table and the van, but nonprofit vote doesn't necessarily have access to those lists. So I think that's a need that has yet to be filled, that we work on creating our own lists and having our own data. I do think, there are good ways to still partner with the van, and in places where we've had programs running for several years, sometimes our anchor will have been able to really develop a good relationship. We know that takes time, relationship with their state table, so that the sites or partners with the anchor are able to have some more access to that list and those lists. But for now, it's really informal, these networks and the way we're approaching it, because we understand that you all have your own unique concerns, voters have their own concerns, and COVID has made it even harder to use some of the tools that had existed, like particularly ones that were very address-based. So it remains a challenge. Hopefully through enough relationship building and developing enough trust with one another, we can get to a point where we have a higher level of comfort and I would say bought-inness from the people we serve around sharing this data for these purposes, strictly nonpartisan, non-commercial, et cetera.
Yes, that would be great. It would also be great for campaigns too, because it's very expensive to get access to that data. So, but I digress. So going back to another one of Pat's questions, I see it was answered by Cameron, but I really want to give Cameron the opportunity to say it out loud, because the chat, I don't think, follows us to some of these other forums that this will be aired on. So I really want to give Cameron the opportunity to share if there are some particular challenges with reaching young voters this year. Oh, no, that's not the question I wanted. I wanted the question about the challenges. Are there challenges happening? Oh, that was the question. Sorry. I'm reading the right question. So Cameron, are there some particular challenges with reaching young voters this year, and how are you addressing them? And like I said, I see you answered in the chat, but I'd like to give you an opportunity to say out loud.
Yeah, thank you so much for that opportunity. So there are some challenges that we're seeing with young voters specifically this year, and I think the biggest one is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Most schools are not in session in person. And because youth voter engagement traditionally takes place in schools, you have a voter registration table set up in the cafeteria, and everyone who wants to can register there. And that has been a very effective model in the past. And that's one that New Voters has used in the past, but unfortunately this year, given public health conditions, that's not possible in many states. And so some of the ways that New Voters has been combating this is we've moved all of our programming to be virtual. And so when we're meeting with these students and training them on how to run a voter registration drive, we're not saying, where are you going to find your registration table? We're saying, who are you going to text? We're going to set up a text banking session. When can you get on a Zoom call and have people come in and you walk them through the process of running, of registering to vote? And so I think what we've really recognized is moving that programming from being in person to virtual settings has been super effective in kind of combating that challenge of engaging young voters when they're not actually in their schools.
That's so awesome. I just love the innovation that is and creativity that's coming out of, just not being able to do things as we normally do things. And hopefully some of these innovative ideas follow us into the future, because I think they're pretty dope. But so going back to Kate and Caitlin, can either of you speak more to relational organizing strategies and what messages help folks engage their friends and family in politics? And Cameron, you might even have something to add here too, because that is also a way that you engage as well. So any of you that want to answer that question, feel free.
Sure. So I would say, make it really personal and engage people around like issues that impact their lives. Sorry to do more self-promotion, but we actually have a webinar that we're hosting next week. Next week is Voter Education Week, and we have the Right Question Institute, and they're going to be leading a mini training, and they have this really cool Why Vote tool where it like lists out all these different government services, transportation, education, childcare, SNAP benefits, all of it, and it asks people to identify what matters to them so that they can connect voting and government with their own lives. And then it has them do question generation on their own. So like, what are people's questions about voting? As messengers, sometimes we get caught up in what we think is important, but you know, I wrote down this quote that I refer to all the time. I need to put it in marker. But it says information that is not requested is not internalized. So I would say it's really important to just have a level conversation about voting. You can use persuasion tactics like how likely are you to vote, but really just making sure that you're centering the voter and their experience rather than being like a robot, like the vote by mail deadline is this day kind of deal.
One thing that I would add, even beyond the issues side of it, is when we're engaging young voters, the social networks that all of our high school students have are a really key component of their lives. And so we're kind of leveraging that. So we're saying, oh, text your friends, and because it's coming from someone who they're hanging out with or they're seeing or they used to see in school every day or something like that. It's a lot more meaningful and they're going to respond to it more than just some random person from a national organization texting them, out of the blue. And I think another component of that is we're trying to make it fun for a lot of these voters. So one thing that we've said in a lot of our text banking sessions is if you have a crush, this is the perfect example of a place to text them, because you can text them and ask them if they're registered to vote, and then start the conversation. They'll see that you're engaged in civic issues, and it'll progress from there. So there's just ways of making it fun for our youth voters to kind of help them engage their peers more effectively.
So that's like, hey, boo, vote and chill. Is it like that?
Yes. We want it to be as non-flirty as possible for the first message, and then continue.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. I kind of wish I was a youth right now to like engage in some of these things. Like, I'm married, I can't flirt with anybody. So, but it really sounds fun. So lastly, how are the Housing Alliance of PA and nonprofit vote building capacity for civic engagement in your nonprofit partners so that our get out the vote impact lasts beyond Election Day?
I just have a quick answer and then I'll turn it over to Caitlin. Part of why the Housing Alliance was so interested in engaging in this project for the first time is that we really see voter registration and voter participation as a critical, important step in civic participation. And we feel, that it's our duty as a statewide organization to help nonprofits across the state really reach organizations that, as I said before, may have been disenfranchised in the past or faced barriers to voting, and really helping people understand that their vote is important and that voting is the first step. And we hope they'll go on to, help others register to vote, consider running for office, reach out to their elected officials when they have local concerns at the local, state, or federal level.
In addition to, just providing the resources we have this year and, planning support to the Housing Alliance and some, physical materials, the online portal, we built all that stuff for this year, but we don't want it to go away, on November 3rd. So some things that we do, well, first of all, for any nonprofit, all our materials are available for free online. Anything you want from us, we may not be able to send you physical copies for you to use if you need 1,000 pledge cards, but we will happily share with you the file. So everything is available for free and accessible. And we do try to, do translations and other things so that they are fully and truly accessible. But we also are always trying to learn. We're going to be surveying all our partners about how this year went, like what they actually did, but also what we at Nonprofit Vote and the Housing Alliance did around their support, and so how that could be improved in the future. And just on a broader sense, this is sort of slow moving work, but we want to build a culture within nonprofits that civic engagement is really important and central, and a way to center and honor the voices of the people we serve. So it's a two-way, and there's not that disconnect of just passive top-down information sharing, and that the people we serve are leaders and voters in our communities. And the more organizations do that, the more other organizations take notice and funders take notice. So nationally, Nonprofit Vote is really working to move the needle on this and get the buy-in from national networks, local nonprofits, funders, and everyone to see the real benefit in this, so that demand continues, and eventually it'll become just as commonplace as any other service that a nonprofit might provide.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add? I didn't want to cut anybody off. We do have one final question that I'll throw to Hannah so that she can ask it. And it's in the chat from Paul.
Yes, thank you, Liv. I appreciate that. So the question from the chat is about PA League of Women Voters and regional leagues that they're targeting public and subsidized housing communities. So is the Housing Alliance working with them?
I'm sorry, was the question, are we working with housing authorities specifically?
Is the Housing Alliance working with the PA League of Women
Yes.
Voters
Yep.
and the regional leagues? Awesome.
So we, when we initiated this program and we put out an application and nonprofits could apply to participate, and two of the applicants who applied are the League of Women Voters of Erie and also the League of Women Voters in Philadelphia. So they are two of our nonprofit partners. Those leagues could be, targeting public housing. I haven't heard specifically, where they're doing their door-to-door canvassing and their phone outreach, but they could very well be targeting those entities. And we also have, as one of our partners, even though they're not officially a nonprofit, the Allentown Housing Authority is one of our partners as well. So, yep, those are just 3 examples of groups that we're working with.
That's great to know. I'm so glad that you were able to answer that question. And then I had thought of a question while you all were answering the last one that Liv threw out. And I definitely encourage folks to keep throwing your questions in the chat. We still do have time for them. But I'm wondering from either Kate or Cameron's end, or Caitlin or Sheila as well, what conversations have you had so far with your partners about the off-ramp from Election Day? I think there's a lot of energy and bracing for Election Day, Election Week. But are there conversations about, for example, organizational culture when thinking about the results of Election Day, locally to nationally? And are there resources or strategies for maintaining that momentum that is really built up to November 3rd to carry out for advocacy outside of election season? Since we know that communities of color, low-income communities have advocacy goals that are outside of electing their lovely representatives, and how they can just carry that through and maintain that.
Yeah, I would be happy to speak on this a little bit. I think new voters, we've definitely always been of the philosophy that no matter the year, whether it's an election year or not, the important work of civic education and civic engagement still has to occur. And so we've had robust programs going in 2019 before all of this process that's currently kind of culminating in these next couple weeks. And it's something that we're going to be continuing after the election. And in terms of maintaining that momentum, I think we've started to have conversations with some of our partners who are creating content with us about creating programming around, okay, the election happened, regardless of the outcome, now what? Because I think regardless of the outcome of the election, there are going to be contingents of America that are either energized or kind of happy with and content with the outcome. And so I think we need to recognize that even if you are happy with the outcome of the election, or even if you're even angrier than you were before, or however you feel about it, that important work of like nonpartisan civic education and nonpartisan civic engagement still needs to occur. So we are having those conversations.
I didn't present today, but I'll chime in on that topic. So this year, for the first time, maybe at the end of last year too, I heard all of these voting experts, the folks that traditionally show up, as Caitlin said, they just drop in with their lists and talk to people and then they're gone. This year, they all started talking about something they called deep canvassing, as if that was the answer to everything, when in fact it just meant talking to people outside of when you want them to vote for your guy and hearing what they had to say. So professionally, I've been doing that for over 10 years now, because we do community development work that's based on that. And when we go into a neighborhood, my business hires people from the neighborhood, and they knock on doors and talk to, at minimum, half of all of the households in a neighborhood about anywhere from 85 to 240 questions in a conversational setting that's very trusted. And because of the trust that they build and the trust that they bring, they can ask people to vote and they'll say yes. And that's not a result of some fancy new methodology. It's just talking to people like people and listening to their circumstances. And that was really driven home to me this year when we pivoted from some work that we were doing up in a community in Erie that has the 14th highest level of poverty in the state of Pennsylvania. We pivoted from the work to do COVID-19 rapid response. Same thing, we hired people in the community, they called folks, flyered folks, took packages, and talked to people about whether or not they had concerns. And I think if nothing else comes out of this S show, which evidently they say on CNN now, of 2020, it's the notion that in a pandemic, we might finally again learn that neighbors can talk to their neighbors. People in a community, whether it's geographic or not, can have conversations about things like, do you have enough to eat? Do you know where to find food? And then by the time the next massive election cycle rolls around, maybe those idiots from out of town won't have to parachute in the neighborhood, and they're going to have a level of faith that the people that actually live in those communities have the power to mobilize those communities better than anybody from anywhere else could hope to do. And I think that's a great opportunity this year. And I hope we can continue that, not just through election season, but continue it into years beyond as well.
Thank you so much, Pat. I'm so glad you jumped in on that from your perspective, working from community development.
Did I swear? I don't think I swore.
No, I don't think so.
Amazing. Excellent. I said
It's
it without
okay.
swearing.
KDKA will tell us if anything you said was unairable. I think you're good though.
Good. Well, the other thing I wanted to do is if we do have some time, we have about 15 minutes of time. So I'm going to lay out some inspiration to you all that was provided not by me, but by one of our colleagues, Councilwoman Bennett. What GSD as something short for getting things done. And last week's session around making sure that we use lessons from the primary to apply to the general election had some very exciting discussions, but one of which was summed up by Councilwoman Bethany Hallam, who was one of our trainers last week. When she was asked what should people take away from last week's training, she said 3 things. People should know about naked ballots. People should know how to avoid naked ballots, number 2. And number 3 is the naked ballots. And they took that and marched with it. Councilwoman Hallam and Councilwoman Bennett gathered a colleague of theirs who was a candidate for office and said, let's just do this. Let's just make this effective. And we have this, and they have been generous enough to share it with us in nonpartisan form, so that if anybody wants to get people's attention about what naked ballots are, and they also have something very handy that's a step 1, 2, 3 version of this that is really easy to learn, then that's something we can definitely share with folks and follow up. I would also point out that they talked their colleagues into doing more. Olivia, who all do we have in this version, and are they all elected officials, or are some of them still candidates? Because we don't want to necessarily pitch the candidates.
They are all elected. So to the far left is Mayor Nikki Nesby of Duquesne. In the middle, many folks know our wonderful state rep, the counterpart to Summer Lee, Sarah Anamorado. And then we have a new council member on Aetna's council, Jessica Simler. So they are all elected, and those are a second round. And we have some men that were shared today too. We don't have those yet, but, and excitingly, we got a call from Kaya Tomlin. If you don't know who that is Coach Tomlin's wife. And she was excited about the campaign, and she may join us as well. So it is catching fire. We've made People Magazine, we've made The Guardian, we've made Fox News. So I think in this time, any attention is good attention. Love it, hate it, wanna, give us a spanking, whatever, you will never forget to dress your ballot, which is the goal. Hashtag dress your ballot, hashtag no naked ballots.
So that's amazing. I just want to say that's amazing. And if there's any direct outcomes that we can think about here, even if they're close, that would be fantastic too. Partnerships, direct things that we can do together.
I agree. I was going to say there's so much love and support for this in the chat that's going around. So that's what we're sending in this energy. And I wanted to ask too, going back to the community engagement part about relationship building and trust, if Councilwoman Bennett, if you might want to speak to that as well, and how that carries through, whether there's an election or not.
Well, I think that was part of the reason why I kind of jumped in and ran for office, is because I felt like our officials were very transactional, and they weren't relational. They weren't, in the community. You saw them every 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, depending on when their office was up. And then you wouldn't see them again. So it's like, well, what's up with that? So I'm only, you only come visit me when you need my vote, and then I never see you again until you need my vote again. Like, that's very, I don't know, it feels very insulting at best. So I wanted to be different. I wanted to build relationship. I was glad that the presentation went long, because I was sitting here printing voter registration forms, because as soon as I'm off of here, I'm running to Homestead for a pop-up voter registration party. So I believe in building relationship. I think that's how you keep people engaged. That's how you bring in new energy. It's how you make sure that, folks are doing that are they're involved, and then understand how to be involved and understand how everyday issues really do affect and do come through policy and can be solved through policy. Not everything, but some things can. And so knowing where those things are, how to address them, and I think that's all a part of our work. And so I'm here for it. I'm just getting started, so my energy's still strong a little bit. Going through Rona season kind of depleted some of that energy, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So I think relationship building is extremely important, and you're always going to see me out here doing it. And until I don't know, like I feel like this is the new wave of the future. I think our newly elected officials are also seeing that that's the way to go. So as we get these new energy and new people into office, I think this is what we're going to raise the bar of what elected officials mean. Like, I get thanked for doing things that I should be doing. And I think the bar is so low, it's not very hard to raise it. So let's continue raising the bar and expecting more. Make it harder for me. Make me earn my little $12,000 a year. So yeah, I think that's what it's about. So I hope that answered your question, Hannah.
Hey, I also would follow up briefly on the getting things done department. I've actually had a follow-up conversation with another presenter last week who actually promised that he would participate in the naked ballots thing too. And I'll remind him of that. But Pat Christmas from the Committee of 70 in Philadelphia had a great idea, and we're going to try to do some work around it too here in Western Pennsylvania and hopefully elsewhere in the state through Keystone Progress Education Fund. It was a great notion, in last week's focused on integrity of the vote and election administration. And Committee of 70 had an important point where they said, we need to emphasize to folks that when people talk about being worried, scared, fearful, doubtful of the integrity of the elections, we need to remind them that the people who run our elections are our neighbors and the people who we know that work in election administration, people that we've trusted for years who aren't perfect, amazingly, but we're going to use that hopefully as a campaign and hopefully work with the folks at Allegheny County. They're going to be working out in Philadelphia, but essentially to do short video interviews with folks who've stepped up as poll workers to say who they are, where they're from, why they're doing this, especially folks that are doing it for the first time, and especially folks who've done it for, like my mother did, like 50, 60 years, because they have a lot to say, and it's on a level that isn't BS, and it's a level that people understand and know because they really are our neighbors. So we're going to get working on that. If anybody has any interest in partnering on that, poke me, send me something, and know that I'll also be following up with everybody, both our presenters, but also the folks out there who have participated over the last 4 weeks and before. We'll make sure that we follow up with everybody. Cameron Deal, thank you. We'll definitely bug you about this. But we'll follow up with everybody, and I think most folks should have my email address already, pat@kingclark.com. You can get me directly. That's my personal email, and we'd love to work with partners on that.
We'll be doing a video, a naked, staying on theme, a naked voting video. So that'll be coming shortly. Look out for that. If you have not seen enough of our nakedness already. So that should be exciting. and we're just trying to make it fun and just get it out here, to make sure, because we, in all seriousness, when this decision was made that we needed and we were going to have to use secrecy ballots, secrecy envelopes, and that they would not be counted unless the ballot was in the secrecy envelope. It really kind of, made us fear, like it scared us, because the number of votes that were forecasted to be lost were about 100,000 votes. And we know that the last election, the president won Pennsylvania only by 44,000 votes. So losing 100,000 votes in a state, well, first of all, we're a key state. And secondly, you know, we were very close in the last election. So losing 100,000 votes was very scary to us. So we figured, let's get naked to save our democracy. There you go.
Man, and do we support it? Thanks, Pat and Liv, for sharing what folks have to look forward to. It's a long but also fast-moving road to election week, and I want to highlight as well what Colleen dropped in the chat is that there is voting trivia being hosted by the Young Nonprofit Professional Network next Tuesday, 6 to 7:30. I will be co-hosting that along with folks with Pump. So we invite, you know, everyone who wants to engage young voters, our new voter friends, to come out, test your knowledge, and get ready to vote. But seeming that it is approaching the end of our time, I do want to run through just some last thank yous. So with that, we'll bring today's training session number 4 to a close. You'll look for a follow-up email from Keystone Progress Education Fund for your evaluation of the training series. Tell us how we did, and for your input on any additional trainings you'd like to see prior to the November 3rd general election. Our recording of today's session will be available at the Pittsburgh City Paper website at pghcitypaper.com. And on many of our partner organizations' websites, GPMP shares the live stream every week. So thanks to everyone for participating, and thank you for all your interest and efforts in helping everybody vote in 2020.
Thanks,
Have
everybody.
a wonderful rest of the day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks
Bye,
so
all.
much.